Our next session centers around innovation and disruption, where fiber goes next. Please welcome our moderator, Lumos Vice President of Market Development, Derek Kelly.
Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. It's gonna have to be a different man. Time may change me.
Well, hello everyone, and we're going to just jump right into things because we only have 30 minutes, so I don't want to spend a lot of time with intros, but we're here to talk about innovation, and that's really the whole reason why we're here, is because we like to innovate, and our industry is definitely leading the way. And so, Sandy, let's kick things off with you as we think about, moving beyond a gig and 10 gig and 25 and however high these numbers are going to go. It's fun to think about speeds, but really, what do the speeds mean? Like, how do the speeds help us actually innovate, or what type of innovation can those speeds lead to?
Yeah, so there's a few points I'd like to make about innovation in the market and in our networks. And I would like to start with speed. And we have offers of 10 gig, 25 gig, 50 gig, and 100 gig, as you know. And I mention all of these speeds and the portfolio because every customer really has a different plan for their network and has a different set in their market and their customers. So for example, Google Fiber has done a demo with 50 gig. They're deploying 25 gig. They've got some real excitement in the market. And more recently, Frontier has made an announcement about a demo that they've done with 100 gig and 50 gig and 25 gig. And I make those examples because every customer is different. And their markets and how they can compete and be innovative in the market is different around the speeds. But it's also not just about speeds, as Derek had said. There's some other points. With the advancements that's been made in fiber performance, it's not just about FTTH. Fiber is becoming everywhere. It's going down every street, in front of every building. And what that means is we can connect to a lot more than homes. We can connect to businesses. We can connect to 5G cells, smart cities. And this gives opportunity to innovate our networks and to have our networks support more than just speed, more than being a dumb pipe. So this is a real advantage, and it's available through increases in reliability and also innovations in latency in the products. And then another point to make about innovation is in automation and the fact that now we can slice up the network and we can have a slice dedicated to gaming, high performance for that, or we could even have a slice that's dedicated for working from home. So this gives a real advantage for increases in revenue. And again, it's not just about speed, it's about other capabilities on top of the network to increase revenue, to increase performance for our networks. And fiber is also it's a green technology that performs far better in terms of power output than coax, than also copper, as well as wireless. So I think there's a lot of innovation going on in the market and in our networks.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, I think another aspect of what speed is bringing, here talking about innovation, is as we develop these higher speeds, these higher optical speeds, we're also going to shift the cost curve for the lower speeds down lower and lower, right? As we innovate more and more on fiber, we're continuously able to drop the cost per bit. We've demonstrated that before. I have a couple of plugs with me, one of our OLTs, pluggable. The cost of this is going to come down dramatically as we continue to innovate and put more and more technology into a smaller and smaller space. And like Sandy said, also using less and less power, because it's a balance between bandwidth and power.
And I would also add, on top of what Sandy said, we are not just chasing speed for speed's sake, right? It is going to be the new normal that multi-gig speeds are going to be really prevalent and needed. When we think about the emerging use cases like more immersive content experiences, artificial intelligence, cloud computing becoming more prevalent, it is not that far-fetched that bandwidth needs are going to grow. And we're not talking about the bandwidth needs of a single device or a single app. It is a world where every single device and every single app is going to need more bandwidth. And so it really is about, practical use cases for these new PON solutions, densifying our network, and building for speed even before consumers need it.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing I'll say, in addition to what you all have talked about, speed and, equipment or the way you transmit speeds to customers, AI and technology, the biggest beneficiary, quite candidly, are two people or two entities. One being customers. They by far get the benefit of all of the above. And B is companies that are actually, and service providers, that are actually going to use those cost savings, reinvest that back in the business for growth, to provide a better experience for their customers, and to innovate even further with technology partners. I think they're going to be the biggest beneficiaries.
So, Kevin, we don't want to turn this into a rural broadband discussion, but maybe if we can just touch on the rural broadband, some of the challenges that can be overcome by innovation. So any thoughts around that?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of residences are unserved and underserved so far, right? It's very difficult to get there. Lots of different economic reasons. So it's a great opportunity for innovation. And what we've seen being very successful is having smaller, purpose-built solutions that are ideal for going out and reaching a handful of residences, maybe hanging on a strand above rather than being in some type of a structure. Again, using less energy, so there's less electricity out available to tap into in a lot of these locations. And then modular solutions. One of the big economic challenges service providers face is the ability to make the business case work. So we've seen a lot of attraction around putting mixed services out in a rural location, meaning, okay, so you have some residential PON coming off of a platform, and at the same time you're serving some active Ethernet connections, either to pick up, mobile wireless backhaul or even for business connections.
Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, and going back to automation, I think being able in these rural areas, once networks are deployed, being able to do provisioning and some of these other steps in an automated way, I think also supports, rural and trying to keep the costs down and manage the activities in a very efficient way.
Well, the great thing about a topic about innovation is we can really touch on everything that touches our business. So let's shift and talk about customer experience, because I think everyone in the room here probably agrees that's what differentiates us a lot from our competition, is just that customer experience. So Liz, how do you think innovation can really help us with improving the customer experience?
Sure, and internet is so important to our lives. Think about it. Most of us work from home sometimes. Every device in our home is relying on the internet. It is really the lifeblood of our homes. And so it is really important for us to be thinking about how do we innovate the customer experience. Now, we spent a few minutes talking about building for speed. I think complementary to that is building a smart and resilient network. There is no reason why a customer should have to call us to tell us that they have a problem with their internet. We should be using tools and technologies to identify issues and resolve those issues even before they present themselves to the customer. So think about an intelligent platform that is constantly sweeping the network, right? Looking at key performance indicators, identifying vulnerabilities, using automated, intelligence and AI to identify and autocorrect those issues on a real-time basis. That's how we're going to deliver the type of customer experience that we want users to have. I think the other thing is when we think about the next generation of internet users, they are different from that old school model of having to call in, right? Consumers today want real-time information, they want immediacy in resolving their issues, and they want to be in control. And we should be providing them that control. Some of what Sandy had said, right? Customers should be able to control and customize and personalize their internet experience for the uses that they need in their homes. So the analogy that I like to give is you may have a car that has different driving modes, right? Sports mode may help you accelerate the car faster. I'm not a car enthusiast, so that's as far as the analogy goes. But you can apply the same concept to internet, which is, should there be a gaming mode, right, that reduces latency? So putting that consumer in control of their user experience, putting them in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I think, Sandy, I would definitely echo your comments. On the customer experience, when I kind of think about this, it's really about what are you doing to innovate across all the different boxes of your business. So as an example, you look at network resiliency as one big component, and how robust is your network? Is it prone to weather issues, or can you make it redundant and robust? So when weather breaks or when you have a hurricane, can you really make sure that you're thinking about those things in advance in terms of generators, things that are natural gas versus not natural gas, but can you truly make your network super resilient proactively? The second bucket, which again, Liz, you just talked about, it's about those customer journeys and really making sure that from awareness to buy, to install, to service, you can automate the process or digitize the process. You can reduce friction points for the customer and make it a seamless experience. I don't think any customer today wants to wake up in the morning and call their service provider. They absolutely want to have a seamless experience. So to the extent you can think through the journeys and innovate along those journeys and make it seamless for the customer. And then the third piece is obviously the operational support. So like when a customer has to call you or when they have to interact with you, regardless of medium, chat, call, email, text, you can truly make sure field operations, tech support, you can truly make sure that you're, again, seamlessly and proactively, Liz, to your point, you're monitoring the network and you can proactively solve problems for customers, or even reactively, you can make it easy. So I think, again, innovation across the customer journey, if you can break it up into different boxes around network, operational support, customer journeys, and then candidly, I also think there's a fourth component to this, which is people and culture within the organization. Because as a fiber service provider, the more you can think about these boxes proactively or these categories proactively and innovate, you're going to make your people thought leaders. You're going to instill that DNA, that thought leadership DNA, and that proactive thinking DNA in the culture of the organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's also about the home, right? The home is becoming super critical, and innovation in the home, whether it's applications on top, whether it's the latest Wi-Fi technology moving to Wi-Fi 7, from Wi-Fi 6 today and Wi-Fi 5, these are all important steps in innovation and in the technology evolution, because it's not just about bringing multi-gigabit services to the home, it's also bringing them in the home and then managing them within the home, because I think every one of us have probably 20, maybe more devices in the home that are connected to the internet, and it's important to manage them well and to manage the signals to them as well. So it's about also in the home and different aspects of the controller space there.
Yeah, and I think building on that, related to customer experience, the service providers, on this panel and in the audience, face several challenges. Of course, you have to get to the customer. Then let's not forget winning the customer, right? Getting them to subscribe to your service. And then probably the biggest challenge is maintaining the customer after you win it. So, we see a lot of innovation related to proactively monitoring what's going on at the customer. Like I'm sure, Liz, you'd agree that when you have the customer and you're serving them with a multi-gig speed, I'm sure you get a lot of technical support calls where people are complaining that they're not seeing the speed, but it's really a Wi-Fi problem in their house. It has nothing to do with the fiber connection to the house. So, we see an opportunity to do some proactive monitoring so that the service provider can know when the customer may be, experiencing some challenges that, maybe it's because they're running speed tests and things like that. That's probably not a good sign if you're a service provider, if your customer is running speed tests, so that you could proactively respond to that before the customer gets disgusted with you and loses trust, feels that they're paying too much for the service they're receiving, even though you're doing a great job as a service provider. Before that whole chain of events starts occurring, you could proactively perhaps intervene and work with them on, even if it's their Wi-Fi settings, et cetera, or explain what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, I think to my mom and just how she uses her Wi-Fi in her house, she doesn't realize the difference between the fiber coming into her house and the Wi-Fi. It's all the same to her, and so just creating that good customer experience is such a key thing. G, let's shift. So right now we're somewhere in the low to mid 50% of the country has fiber today. Over the next few years, that's going to creep up 60 and 70 and hopefully higher and higher. How can we innovate to not only help us to deploy faster, but what can help us get to that higher penetration and take rate sooner and earlier in the cycle?
Yeah, good question, Derek. I mean, we've certainly seen, I remember when I joined, and this is anecdotal, but I joined the fiber industry in 2018. At that point in time, the company that I was working for, we were deploying, we were deploying about 100,000 passes, 150,000 passes. Now we're seeing companies deploy 500,000, 500,000 passes a year. We're seeing other companies deploy 1 million to 2 million passes a year, some more. Again, from what you mentioned, there's talks about, bigger companies being at 30 million fiber passes by 2030, followed by 18 million, followed by 15, followed by 10. We've seen some latest, M&A deals and announcements also. All in all, I think from a penetration standpoint, that's homes passed. When I think about it from a penetration standpoint, we've talked about, I think the first wave of penetration typically will come in from the network resiliency benefits that we've all talked about. Speed, lower latency, just more resilient to weather and other events and so on and so forth. That I believe has gotten most fiber providers the first wave, the first 10 to 15 to 20% of penetration. The second piece is really the customer benefit, right? We've talked about customer experience also. And when it comes to customer benefit, outside of the journeys and outside of the benefit on those journeys to customers with fiber providers, you obviously have the benefit of home values to a certain extent, because some studies have shown that home values do appreciate when there's fiber serviceability in the area and to your home. So there's that benefit there. The other benefit on increasing penetration is NPS. So we have seen, again, based off historical data, and this is I'm making a broad assumption here, but we've seen that NPS scores typically with fiber providers, be it a greenfield fiber provider or a brownfield fiber provider, is that NPS is typically higher. And the reason being is because, again, they've thought through the technology benefit, they've thought through network resiliency, they've thought through customer experiences, they've gotten into the business because they understand that there is a benefit to the subscriber base. So you've covered the network piece, you've covered the customer piece. Then you truly have to come down to, what are the partnerships with the fiber provider to increase penetration? What other partnerships can you have in the industry outside of obviously your CPE provider, your software provider? Your other partnerships are with companies like MyBundle TV as an example, or you have streaming partnerships, you have video partnerships in the future to increase penetration. I even foresee partnerships with business application vendors as an example, specifically if you have a strong SMB business or if you have a strong commercial business, you could be partnered with them, along with perhaps some other creative partnerships with other fiber providers also. So as an example, if I'm a fiber provider that has a serviceable footprint, but I'm losing a fair number of customers through moves, I could potentially partner with other fiber providers across the country, just very much like cable, to ensure that they are capturing my move traffic and I'm capturing their move traffic. So that's another way. So we avoid losing business to satellite, cable, fixed wireless, and so on and so forth. So I think there's multiple legs to the stool, network being one, customer experience being two, partnerships being 3. And then the fourth piece, or the fourth place where I see an ability to go up on penetration, or an opportunity to go up on penetration, is the commercial business. And so if you overlay your residential/consumer network with a strong commercial and strong MDU business, I definitely see an opportunity to increase penetration holistically across all channels. Smart bills, we talked about smart bills, smart cities. These are opportunities where you're providing something, multi-channel, omni-channel for all different segments in a community versus just being a consumer-centric business or a commercial-centric business.
Well, and certainly, we talk about some product innovation, but also deployment innovation is critical. And I know there's a lot of work that goes on with splicing, how to do that in a more automated way, because being satisfied with 70% penetration is certainly not where we want to be. We want to be 100%. BEAD is, or at least as much as possible, BEAD is certainly driving some of that. So, there's the full end-to-end innovation that we need to think about, well beyond, products and services. And there's a whole leg to deployment innovation, as I said, with fiber, with splicing, with connectors. And we need to drive that part as well.
And I mean, another big challenge, of course, I think no one would disagree with, is labor. Getting the labor out there to get fiber to these locations, get the installs going and things like that. So I think there's an opportunity for innovation. We're seeing some of the first most interesting AI use cases are simply tearing down the barriers between different stores of data within a corporation, to create, for lack of a better description, an easily accessible knowledge base for labor to access, so that, yeah, it's great if you have someone in the field that's been doing this for 10 years, but that's not the reality today. It might be somebody that's doing it for 5 days, but you have to try to give them 10 years of experience, 10 years of knowledge when they're in northern Michigan, in a really rural location, and they run into a challenge. Be great if they could access that knowledge base from across your corporation from their mobile device without logging into 8 different secure locations on the corporate network and searching each one to find the information.
Yeah, and Derek, something that G said about partnerships and bundles is there's an opportunity to rethink how we sell and package internet. Right? Today's internet value proposition is based on 2 things, price and speed. And those things are important, right? They're important in the consideration set, how consumers buy internet, but we should be rethinking what is that holistic internet value proposition that we should be providing to customers. Someone who is working from home is going to have very different needs than someone who's just casually surfing the web. So how do we think about how do we create internet plans that really resonate for our consumers based on their lifestyles? So what are the features? What are the value-added services that we could be providing to the customer that is personalized for them? Someone who is working from home may need a reliability feature, right? Someone who has very sensitive information going over the internet may need security features. So I think another way to drive penetration and consumer demand is really rethinking how we package internet and make them relevant. And I think some of the partnerships that G was referring to would also help with that.
Yeah. And again, the last point I'll make, which I know is a bit of it's a different thought. It requires a lot of creativity and maybe perhaps an operational lift. But I think the partnerships, you can do them for acquisitions and applications, but the partnerships can also be within the fiber providers on, I talked about moves, but even things such as non-pay as an example. Increasing penetration is not just an acquisition game, it's also a retention game, it's also a customer satisfaction game. And you really want to make sure that what you've acquired is what you retain and creates lifetime value. So, if I have a base of customers that have provided, who have not been great customers, specifically for non-pay, I need to be able to share that information with other fiber providers, because if it's happened to me, it's going to happen to somebody else, and vice versa, for the most part. So, partnerships can take multiple different, there can be multiple different dimensions or reasons for a partnership, but I do feel that as fiber providers, we all need to come together and see what can we do as a community to acquire more and penetrate more, because again, there are many benefits to communities and customers by everyone adopting fiber. And then B is, what can we all do to retain those customers and make sure that we're maximizing the customer lifetime value?
So thinking about maybe some of the ideas we just mentioned, whether it's the partnerships or how we're consuming and selling services, or just any other thoughts around like what are the barriers to help us or prevent us from being able to innovate along those ideas or other ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to talk about what Kevin mentioned around, getting a lot of calls and saying, I don't see 8 gig on my speed test, right? So when you think about the internet value chain, the ecosystem is actually quite broad. Now, many of us in the room spend a lot of time thinking about, what network to build, how to operationalize that network, what CPE to put in the home. But ultimately, the consumer experience is based on the device in their hands. And so when we have gatherings like this, I think it's really important that we bring in retail device makers. We should be talking to chipset vendors. We should be broadening that ecosystem and influencing their roadmap, right? We can spend all day talking about how to upgrade our network, upgrade our CPE, but we also need them to come along in that experience to make sure that the customer is feeling the experience that we want them to have. So I think that's another opportunity for innovation.
Gee, deep in thought over there.
I am. I just can't find a good way to articulate it. So I'll pass.
Okay, well, shifting away from barriers, we're running out of time, but does anyone want to touch on just the business piece of things? We've focused a lot on, fiber to the home and some of these builds and sort of the consumer experience, but just any thoughts around innovation when it comes to the business segments of our bases?
Well, certainly some customers have some really unique models in terms of, how they're deploying capabilities and features. We actually have a customer, not in this region, but in Africa that's, selling by the hour. And they actually have, a very strong business case. So I'm not suggesting that we do that here, but, we need to also be innovative in terms of how we deliver. As Liz was saying, we need to understand what our consumers, are really looking for. And it's not, all the pieces of the network. It is their experience and, getting it at a price that they value. So that's the Africa example is, something that's interesting to maybe strike some thoughts here in the U.S. as to, how we offer in a very creative way, really what the consumers are looking for. And teenagers certainly don't have an understanding of all the network elements and what it takes. They just want the internet to be connected, and we need to think in innovative ways in our offerings like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I keep harping on the economics of things, but even if we're talking about the served, the folks that have the opportunity to have multi-gig connections at their home and things like that, it's still quite expensive, and especially when you start to look at it with not just your broadband connectivity, but it's really just about having seamless connectivity to everything that you need all the time, wherever you are. So, we all, if we raise our hands, who has more than 3 streaming services, who has some type of fixed television service in their house as well as their internet access, and multiple living locations, multiple working locations. And when you really sit down and add all of that up, if you took the time, it's quite expensive of all the different services. And figuring out what is the optimal economics to go forward with, it's quite difficult. I'm sure, each of us probably has that task now and then within our homes from our partners of, hey, sort this out. Like, let's figure out what the optimal solution is. It's hard to figure out. And I think there's an opportunity for innovation with that in terms of providing connectivity where it's a simplified and more economical billing structure as well.
So I'd like to thank my panel. We're going up against our time. But as I was sitting here during the discussion, I kept thinking one of the things my CEO always says is we want to do business how our customers want to do business, not we're not the ones dictating it. And I think that sums up everything we've been talking about here. It's not about speed and bytes. It's really about doing business how our customers want to do it and thinking about ways to do it differently. And so I'm excited about everything that was talked about, and just to think about what the art of possible is for our industry over the next 5 years is exciting. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for having us.